right, folks, welcome to our, I guess we can say it now, our first official episode. So welcome all. Hi again.
Hi.
Yasaman and Sarah. How's everyone doing?
Great. How's everyone's weekend with Valentine's?
Yes.
And Valentine's loneliness sometimes? Or, creepiness?
Creepiness?
Yeah, sometimes it gets creepy for me because none of us, neither my husband nor I remember it's Valentine's, and we will get, thanks to our friends on social media, we will get reminded every time that it's Valentine's, and we are the lamest people on earth for not celebrating Valentine's. So, yeah.
My Valentine's Day was great. Had a hot date with my therapist, so I got to talk to him about how life is. So I went out and let's say I did some grocery shopping that exact day and found out again that people really like to tell me about their trips to China for some reason. I'm like, bro.
Like strangers?
I'm not Chinese. Yeah, it's just strangers. Whenever I strike up a conversation, it seems like if they've been to China, they're going to tell me that they've been to China because they think I'm Chinese.
You don't look Chinese at all.
Is it just out of nowhere?
Yes, it's out of nowhere. I didn't bring anything up, but I'm glad. Like I finally got a chance to flip it around, and I asked him. So you've been to China, right? So I don't want to shake your hands because do you have coronavirus?
Yes, that's a good strategy to repel people. Mm-hmm. To repel those.
No. It was a cool, fun, interesting conversation. Get to meet cool people all the time. So. I did that, and then made some ice cream, and then just ate my feelings away. So.
So how was your Valentine's?
I also ate my feelings away with friends at a Chinese restaurant, and it was really good.
Yeah.
What'd you have?
Let's see. We had this crispy pork dish, another beef dish. We had lots of meat, some noodles. I don't know. I had my Chinese friend order everything, so because it was family style.
Yeah, and speaking of that, to be honest, we had a family thing with our friends. Also, we cooked together
With some of your friends, right?
with some of my friends. Yeah.
No, we don't count.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
No.
Actually, they were my roommates also. So,
This was definitely a privileged
yeah.
invite.
An elite invite. Not
It was very
invited.
embarrassing. So, just in the morning, I texted a group of my friends that you see here and told them, "Oh, hi babies, do you want to spend Valentine's night together and cook together and have a family dinner?" And then I realized that, oh my gosh, I texted in a wrong group. But the thing is that you guys are also part of the family. You are always welcome.
No. Yasmin is one of the sweetest people on the planet. We're just giving her shit right now. Especially me. I love giving people shit.
We just love to tease.
But if you guys are just joining us, if you're not familiar, we're a group of independent filmmakers, and we love to talk about movie news, movie-related things. So why don't we get to it? I'll start off with a couple of things that stick out recently. I don't know if you guys had a chance to see Robert Pattinson in the Batsuit. That was cool. You guys are not as nerdy as I am, huh? Or geeked out by news like this. The director, Matt Reeves, put out like a little 10, 20-second teaser of him brooding in this dark lit Batsuit with some musical score accompaniment. And it was cool enough for me to decide I got to click, and I did, and it was Robert Pattinson in a batsuit. So no comment after that. Box office news. So Harley Quinn, the Birds of Prey. I don't know if you guys had a chance to see that. I saw it over the weekend. I thought it was great, but unfortunately, I don't know what's going on. Disappointing show at the box office. Like one of the lowest grossing DC movies of late.
Oh, really?
Yeah, even though like they got great audience scores and Rotten Tomatoes had it at like 80%.
Oh, 80%.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's high.
Yeah, yeah. For especially for like a DC comic book movie.
Yeah.
You know, that puts it in the like Wonder Woman, Shazam realm, but it didn't do as well. You know what did do well though, and apparently all the redoing of the animation helped out. Sonic dominated. Got surprisingly good audience score. I think on Rotten Tomatoes it's at like 60%, but the audience score was like near 90 last time I checked. So we've got Sonic, and I'm sure people know what the Oscars are, right?
Yeah, so finally, award season just came to an end with Oscars concluding, and I know everyone always kind of wait to see who will win the best picture category home, and surprisingly, this year, Parasite made some history by winning the first picture award, and it was I think great accomplishment for a foreign language movie to come this far in the game, and winning 3 out of 5 major categories in Oscars is not like an easy task. So Parasite won Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Screenplay. And yeah, it's a very interesting news for people like me who are coming from not like a English-speaking country. So it's a good news, and it's a hopeful news for other filmmakers. So Parasite also won the other award in the recently named category international feature film, which used to be called foreign language.
It used to be a best foreign language film.
Yeah. And I feel like that it's a step forward to call to rename the category, because it's more inclusive in a way, and you know, the whole idea of calling a category non-English or foreign language category, it just kind of like alienating for me, and it's a step forward, I think, and it's a good move. Although it took the Academy over 60 years to figure out, it's kind of like dividing to call some movies just foreign language movies, but because cinema should be like a umbrella that is welcoming to everyone. But
at least they made a move. There's still so many things out there that are, you know, that remain, that are still dividing, even though they don't necessarily mean it to be. But you know, hopefully we get to a point where it's just best films overall, and we don't have to have these supplementary
international or like any titles.
Yeah, but I get the reason for now. For now, it's important because they're definitely underrepresented and, you know, just not known. They don't have, you know, a lot of, you know, backing some of these films, a lot of the budgets and stuff. So I can see the reason why it's still needed, but definitely a step in the right direction to...
Yes. And I'm against the whole culture of like us versus them. So... I feel like that, yeah, as you said, it's a positive move. Although still there is a lot of like debate around the Oscar with the issue of inclusivity, and we all know that everyone is talking like how it's not inclusive, how we don't have enough women nominated in major categories like directing and
didn't Natalie Portman wear a cape or something with like a bunch of female directors' names? So once again, you know, like I feel, and you know, and with Parasite winning, I've heard a lot of noise from, you know, some Korean people and Asian people in general just being so happy about it. Like my personal take on that is, you know, like that's awesome, it's historic, but I don't want to make it that big of a deal. You know, I think in school, like that whole Asian pride thing with some people always rubbed me the wrong way. Like I never wanted to be a part of that or overrepresent it, because I think it just draws attention to the fact that, hey, we're different. You know what I mean? So I agree with you And I think, I think it's great. First of all, I just think it's a great movie. I think it should have won regardless. Hopefully there was no there was no reason other than the fact that it was a great film, the best film of the year. That hopefully that was the only reason why it was voted for. But aside from that, I do agree with you. I think what's his name, Daryl Davis, even mentioned something. He was on Joe Rogan's podcast. He was the black guy that converted clans people to retire from that lifestyle, and he has a whole bunch of hoods and stuff as a kind of a collection. And he brought up an interesting idea of Black History Month should be no more. It should just be part of the school's curriculum. You know what I mean? But he did make the point that it was needed at one point because they had nothing. Now they have the shortest month of the year, right? But we've moved past that now, because right now it's just resentment when the month comes, and it's only this small period of time when, African American culture had a huge influence, that there's plenty to discuss, but they study the same people over and over every year during that month. You know what I mean? When there's so much more. And that's sort of like on the macro level of what I feel like with all the talk about Parasite and, it's so great for the Asian people. It's great, but let's move on. Let's move past it. Let's just remember that this was one of the best movies of the year, and the best movie of the year, apparently.
And I'm glad that we talked about Parasite in our previous podcast, which is our pilot podcast episode about both Parasite, and we recommend you guys to watch it. It was before Oscars happened, so I'm glad that we gave you that recommendation on that time. So, I agree with all the things that you said. And
what do you guys think? Do you think we need Black History Month? You think it should be abolished and put into just the regular school curriculum as part of American history?
Yeah, I think teaching history should just be inclusive overall.
Yes.
Right.
And I agree that it shouldn't be something temporary, only for a specific period of time. And it shouldn't be glorified over that specific period of time also. So it gives it kind of the over-representation feel. And a lot of people might kind of have the negative attitude towards it, because they feel like that, every time around this time of the year, there's a lot of talk. But if the discussion would be an ongoing discussion, no one would be noticed that, this is the time of the year that we need to talk about the Black history or African American history. It should be always there. There shouldn't be necessarily a specific time allocated to.
Do you think we'll ever get to a point in time where it's just best film and not even a best actor or actress, just best actors, the two best actors, best actor, best supporting actor, best film sort of thing?
I think with
and not necessarily. I mean, do you think the movie making as a whole will just be so global that these best foreign film categories won't be necessary?
I think that's definitely a possibility, especially as the younger generations get older. Because I think it's the older generation that holds on to those categories more tightly.
Yes, and also the newer generations, especially the millennials. If you look at the ethnical profile of millennials, it's more diverse. It's more diverse than all the previous generations combined. So I feel like that, if talking about only US, newer generations are diverse enough, and hopefully they are open-minded enough to think more inclusive and to be more comprehensive in terms of the decisions when it comes to movies and awards and categories, or in general anything. So I do believe that might be a possibility. And also we need to think how the viewers in general will react to these award shows during the time. So if the trend, let's say if the trend as of now continued and it would be somehow like white male dominated throughout the time, for sure it will lose a lot of attraction, and so things will change hopefully for the better. So
Well, you had something about that, about viewership and whatnot. Do you want to discuss that a little bit at all?
oh yeah, so
In regards to the
yeah,
Oscars?
speaking about that, Oscars viewership this year hits the all-time low record with with
I'm
it's
not a
roughly
fan.
around like actually it's 23.6 million viewer this year, and it's compared to the last year 2019 it's 20% less. And a lot of people talking about that compared to last year, this year has like less diversity in terms of inclusion of African American. And last year we had like Black Panther, which was a very successful movie in box office as well. So a lot of like viewers want to watch that to see their favorite actors walking the red carpet. And this time Oscar wasn't as inclusive as last year. And also the films. Like,
so are you saying that was that the major reason for the decline, or?
no, I feel like it's a general trend, because if you compare it to like 6 years ago, like in 2014, Oscars has over 40 millions of views.
Well, in my opinion, we're trending in the right direction, because, I never understood the appeal of the Oscars. I understand the appeal for having awards, but the glitz and the glamour and the talk about the outfits, and it's just so tiresome, and it lasts like 3 hours, like I got a kick when Ricky Gervais was on, because he got to shit on people, and that's kind of why I tuned in previously. But yeah, I mean, I can live without it. Is all I'm reacting to, or is all I'm saying?
Yeah, and so the other one of the other reasons that people mentioned online for the decline of viewership of awards in general is that nowadays, like, newer generations don't want to sit and watch a 3 hours like show with at least 1 hour worth of like advertisement in between. It's such a waste of like time, at least for us, that we used to like fast time scrolling of our screens, and we just want to get the information fast. We don't want to watch and see some like lame jokes or like the star or the chat about like red carpet or things like that. So definitely the type of audience that are watching, that like to watch and sit the whole show for like 3 hours straight will change. So those type of audience would not be there anymore. So that could be part of the reason that this award.
I think we can get this cracking in under an hour.
Yes.
You can get all the news about who won and the funny reactions or whatever happened at the Oscars on social media.
Yes.
Yeah, I think social media is a big part of it, but it's also, I mean, people do have the attention span with like long form, like podcasts and whatnot. They're growing, right? So it's not necessarily just the attention; it's the content too. And I think the content of the Oscars is just not something that appeals to me specifically.
Yeah. It's not. I can definitely say so. I have to say this, as like a young kid, I would love to watch Oscar. Maybe because I was like this like girl in Iran that we have no exposure to like awards, like award shows like Oscar. So it was a huge deal for us to watch it, and there was always a discussion about who wore what, So as like teenagers, we like to discuss those. So it was a very like enjoyable activity for me and my family to watch Oscars or Grammys or like I don't remember if we ever watched Golden Globes or anything like that, but
I think the Golden Globes are decent to me because like they drink, so it's usually funnier, you know, like especially with like their hosts and stuff. But
yeah, but around the time that I was like younger, there wasn't much buzz around Golden Globe in Iran, so it was more about Oscars. And you know, Iranian actually director Asghar Farhadi, he won Oscars 2 times in the past like 10 years. So it was a huge thing for Iranian people to see that, an Iranian director can won, or an Iranian movie can won Oscars. So it was a huge always pride in the award. But yeah, that's a good point that you are asking. And my question is that if from now on people would actually care about these awards in the same way as they did care few years ago or like decades ago, do these awards mean the same thing as they meant like maybe 20 years ago? Is there a change in the meaning or like the pride in winning an Oscar?
like I think that's the pinnacle of the awards, and I think at least for as long as I can foresee in the future, it's always going to be an attractive thing that people like will want to win. It's a great feeling to win something, and that's the top prize. It's just the format that I can do away with. So I think as far as like, especially in a creative field, you're director, actor, you want to be recognized. It's part of being an artist, right? Is knowing that other people are feeling the same way you feel about this work that you just created. So I think it's a nice feeling. It's not the end all or be all. I just don't care for the glitz and the glamour.
Yeah, and it was very shocking for me the first time I came to US and like this Iranian movie won Separation won Oscar, and I was very proud the next day, and I appeared in grad school and I asked all my American classmates, okay, did you watch Oscars? Did you notice that Iranian? And they were like, no, we don't watch it, we don't care. So no one cared, even like 5 years ago, at least in the newer generation. So
yeah,
I know that a lot of like younger generations don't care, but
and the rich get richer. I think like I was like disgusted, like the gift bags. I think this year I saw some ridiculous number. Let's just throw it out there, like $25,000 a bag or something like that. It's like these are already like millionaire, actors and things like that. Like let's just like donate that somewhere or give me a bag, But anyways, that's all. I know if I get invited, I'd be like, yes, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna have the best time of my life.
I'm gonna get a $25,000 gift bag.
But from here, perched way down lower, it's not entertaining enough for me to hold my curiosity. But so the Oscars did. So what we're gonna try and do is review and go in depth into some important films that we feel like that have come out in recent times. So that's a perfect segue because we were talking about the Oscars. Who won the best Oscar for, and this is kind of our realm, right? Best documentary.
Like, do you want to go for it? Well, let's go together. American Factory has won Oscar for best documentary. And it's a film directed by Stephen Bongar and Julia Reichardt. Julia Reichardt is a professor at Wright State University, which is an Ohio university, and the movie is centered around like a GM, a closed down GM plant in Dayton, Ohio. So so it got right now it's just some background information, 96% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's described as a thoughtful and troubling look at the dynamic between workers and employers in the 21st century globalized economy. And the story is in post-industrial Ohio, a Chinese billionaire opens a new factory in the husk of an abandoned General Motors plant.
hiring 2,000 blue-collar Americans. Early days of hope and optimism give way to setbacks as high-tech China clashes with working-class America. And an interesting fact is this is the first production from the Obama's company called Higher Ground. So this was their flagship first production. This documentary
Yes.
called American Factory.
Yeah, and based on my understanding, the main two directors, they are from Dayton, Ohio. So when they heard when they heard on the news about the opening of the new factory, they started filming, and it was not until a year after they started the filming that they started attracting producers. So Obama's production company actually involved after Subway meet through the project, so they weren't involved from the beginning, which makes sense. A lot of it's a very common thing with documentaries that some groups, they are starting filming and they feel the need for like more financial support, so they will reach out. And I watched the little talk conversation on Netflix with Obama's that they have with the directors, and it was very interesting that they mentioned that they picked this documentary specifically because of the story that it's telling, and the whole storytelling aspects of this documentary was something very appealing to Obama's. So that's the main reason they decided to become or step in as producers for this documentary.
Well, we're based out here in the Midwest, so I can see definitely the appeal and the importance to do something about to sort of tell this story. What did you think, Sarah, about what's your initial reaction to after watching the documentary?
So my initial reaction was I really enjoyed the documentary, and a lot of that reason is because of my background in anthropology. So in anthropology, an anthropological approach to filmmaking is very observational, which this film was. So I really enjoyed that because I was kind of expecting more of a advocacy film, but I didn't feel like it was a typical advocacy film where they were pushing an agenda, which a lot of documentaries do. And I really appreciated it because I could tell the filmmakers, I read later the filmmakers spent 4 years filming. And so you could tell they really built relationships of like trust and friendship with their participants. They had so much access to not only the American workers, but the Chinese workers as well. And I thought they brought to light a lot of different perspectives on like
I thought they did a great job balancing out both sides.
Yeah, but it's a very important aspect also for us because as documentary makers, the very first step is to establish that relationship with your subjects. Because if they don't have your trust, they cannot open up, they cannot speak their truth. And what was really striking for me was the fact that these people, the workers, that we see them speaking on the movie, they know, for example, some of the things that they are saying on camera is not good for them if the employer would heard of that. Like, for example, when the employees are talking about like how they think there are a lot of issues with the management of the company, I'm sure they don't want to they know it's not the management would not be happy to hear those, but they still feel like free enough to talk about, they feel the trust between themselves and the filmmaker, so they could openly talk about how they felt about certain issues. So I feel like that bond should be there between the the filmmakers and the subjects, and it's something.
Always, but I didn't see that bond translate in this documentary.
What do you mean you didn't see that translate?
Well, let's get your initial reaction though. So did you enjoy the documentary?
So I have to be honest, it was a little bit boring for me to watch. Like, because you know, it was a more like an ethnographic film, or it was very observational, and you have to be really into the subject that to, you know, to sit there and watch it for 2 hours. So it's a bit long. But so my initial like impression of the movie was like it was a little bit boring, and that boringness not coming from the fact that there were a lot of like characters or a lot of like, you know, observational stuff. It came from the point that I feel like that there is a missing thread of you know, missing thread of like ideas, or uniting ideas.
Like it didn't have a story arc.
Yeah, but it's again acceptable because it was like an ethnographic or observational movie throughout like a 4 years period, as you said. So things cannot be the same throughout like a such long period of time, obviously, for the workers and for
Not necessarily. It's they chose for them to not have a story, to be this fly on the wall type of filmmaking style. You know, I mean, I'm on board with you. I completely respect the heck out of this film. I thought it was well done. It took a lot of work and dedication. I want to give a special shout out to the cinematographers Stephen Bogner, Aubrey Keith, Jeff Reichert, Julia Reichert, and Eric Stoll, because I thought they did an amazing job. Anytime the camera was on sticks, this thing looked like high quality stuff. And the music too, Chad Cannon, I thought they did a good job of really highlighting how you're supposed to feel, especially without like a cohesive, you know, story arc. And I think that lends to part of the criticism that I've seen of this film being sort of dispassionate in a way. Like, I think it's fine in a documentary to make, I think that's the goal, right? You want to make a point and then a counterpoint and then end with your vantage point on the whole subject. And this didn't really, you got two sides and it didn't really point you one way or the other, which I think is fine for this type of informational filmmaking. But if we're talking about documentary, like, if we're talking about filmmaking in general, I got into it to tell a story, to help shape a story. And this is sort of just like, in a way, here's what happened, do with what you please, you know?
Mm-hmm,
And
yes.
so I think that contributes to your feeling of, you know, it being somewhat, you know,
something was missing.
I mean,
maybe
you think about it. How many? Do you guys remember the names of the characters? Because I can't count
Only
how many
some.
characters were introduced in
Yes.
this. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So there was no time to really develop a relationship with any one of these characters. And without that time, you can't really invest your thoughts or emotions into this.
Yeah,
You know?
because I feel like, again, here the intention of the filmmakers wasn't necessarily creating the bond with a specific subject. It was like the overall subject as a whole. Like, and when I talked about the trust, I was thinking mainly the trust they established with their Chinese, their Chinese collaborator, because you can see literally they are filming from from the inside of like a session that they are giving introduction about Americans. You know, these kind of,
They also went into some workers' homes.
yes,
Which
yeah, but you know,
They went into one worker's homes, and it happened almost 3/4 of the way in before we got any sort of emotional context with him. And we saw him so briefly that, you know, something that should resonate much deeper didn't really. And that was the point where he was talking on, he was pulling up his cell phone, and then he paused and was like, I really miss my family. I mean, that's great, but we saw you for like a total of like 6 seconds on the screen. So I don't want to shit on this or poo-poo this movie too much. Maybe we can start talking about some of the positives, because what I do give them credit for is they sought out to do one of the most difficult things, right? Which is create that fly on the wall look, non-traditional sit-down interview, follow only a handful of, or you know, like less than a handful of characters. And to pull it off in a way that, you know, even though I might have been bored as well, I was still engaged. They didn't lose me, you know, in the hour and a half long that they did. I do think that not many can pull that off. I do think that they balance both sides of the story. Even the xenophobia, like remember when the Americans were talked about as having fat fingers and they were like lazy. I thought that was interesting. I don't know. Do you think that's true? Do you think us Americans, are... I was born here, by the way, FYI.
No, I don't.
Do you think Sarah and I are lazy with fat fingers?
So?
Fat fingers.
I can definitely tell that your fingers are like skinnier than mine. So, as a Middle Eastern, I have more fat fingers as yours. But, yeah, I understand what.
Just watch the tapping.
Okay, so I understand their perspectives on Americans, that they think they are lazy, but I think it's more of a cultural difference. Like,
you mean the Chinese, that they think the Americans are lazy?
Yeah. So it's a more cultural thing. Like, Chinese so somewhere throughout the movie you will hear this like dialogue that Americans are not working to make the glass, they are working to make the money. This is basically their main philosophy, because this job is not their everything. It's just a mean to everything.
Yeah, means to live.
Yeah.
And for the Chinese people, there's just so much of them that you have no choice, essentially. You got to do it, otherwise you'll be phased out, right?
Yeah.
And part of it's that one, but also it's not the fear of getting fired. It's also the whole culture of like, devote all you can to the purpose. Something of that sort. I feel like that, especially in the scenes that you see in like the Chinese plant, in the mainland China plants, that you see the workers are like kind of like military.
Definitely.
They are like repeating
before they start off their day. They all repeat the same phrases and mottos like in unison, like they were part of.
And when the American supervisor tried to do that,
he was like,
factory.
he was like, so the Chinese people had everything well down. Everyone like repeat after me, da da, and everyone is attentive and
like count off numbers and
And then when the one of the American manager who was Caucasian tried to implement that, it didn't go so
everyone
well.
was just staring at.
Yeah, he was like, so we're gonna try something new today. So everyone, you guys have your safety goggles on? Yeah. Oh, okay. Everyone have their hats on. Well,
okay,
let's have a great day. It was so awkward.
It's very
I think
awkward.
It's coming also from the culture.
I mean, that just shows that you can't just treat people from different cultures in the same way, because everyone comes with their own backgrounds that inform how they act.
Yes, and especially you will see a lot of like little bites of people talking. I mean, U.S. workers talking about they don't want to do these type of things fast because it's dangerous. So again, this is one of
the Chinese, it's part of their life to get injured at work, and to ignore that. But we have like safety concerns over here, and so like when they're requested to like lift over the weight limit on a forklift, they'll say no, and the Chinese workers don't understand it because they do what they got to do. F it if we get injured or hurt along the way,
Yeah, but again, that's part of my issue with this film. Like, it didn't delve into the issue as deeply as
Let's stick to positives. Let's stick to positives.
Okay.
Let's give them their due, and then let's get to.
For sure, this movie has a lot of positive things. I mean, the whole fact that you can see these cultural differences, you can get into the head of like the main chairman, the Chinese chairman, and know him personally, and kind of like also develop a kind of compassion for him. To see that, he's a good guy, he has a purpose. Especially in the beginning of movie, you see him talking about like, we are here in US, we do things in a way that American likes. This is an American factory, not a Chinese.
Is that what you got from him? I thought he was unlikable until a few seconds at the very end.
No, I didn't have like an unlikable feeling of him in the beginning. Actually, in the beginning I thought that he wants to understand these Americans. He's a
I thought
harsh
he was kind of condescending, like when he was talking about, no, we do it their way. We don't want to like offend them, sort of, and I found him condescending.
I thought he was kind of cringy. Because especially when he was like, move the
sorry.
fire alarm over here. But I guess we're talking about positives.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I went off that rail.
Something I thought was positive was that, like we talked a little bit about earlier, I thought the filmmakers would have more of a Western gaze. They'd be more biased towards showing Americans in a more favorable light.
It was very balanced.
But it was very balanced.
Yeah, on both sides, because they even showed the American who was bitching about the microwaves not working, and like how they're going to utilize the break room for more like machinery, and he was complaining about the Asian kids on like on a television screen because a promo of Chinese kids came up, and he was like, they're in this, so they showed both aspects of that. So I like that. I liked that it was pro union. I mean, you can tell. Let's be real.
Yeah,
but it wasn't really propaganda. It wasn't presented that way, and I loved not just showing both sides, but showing them together. So I loved the interactions, like when they were fishing and the guy was trying to tell him, use Wheaties, and then he couldn't even spell Wheaties right.
And the Thanksgiving.
With
Bob.
Was it Bob?
Rob.
Rob.
And inviting a bunch of his Chinese friends over. And
to shoot, right?
Yeah. And like ride around on his Harley.
China.
Yeah, Rob was one of the few well-developed character in this movie for me, because you see him at the beginning, his story, and at the end you will know also what
he
happened.
didn't really have a middle. He had a beginning and then an end. He lost his job.
But still, he's one of at least, come on, compared to other characters.
No, for this film.
This film.
Developed as a character in general?
Yeah, but
no,
I don't think their goal was really to develop characters, though.
Yeah, it's
that's
not
why,
like a movie. It's like a movie Joker.
Think about all the other documentaries out there, okay? And think about the character. I mean, just because it's not a film, like a movie, a science fiction movie or a drama or whatever, just because it's a documentary doesn't mean you can't develop a character. That's part of your job. As a filmmaker, it's part of your job. So all I'm pointing out is that he definitely had a beginning and he had an end. He got fired. I don't remember a thing about his journey in the middle. That's all I'm saying.
He did some talks about his in the middle. I'm sure that we saw him more than twice in the whole thing, but
well, if it's not memorable, then they didn't really. I love the vest though, not fitting on the fat guy when he went to China.
Yeah. I liked that
brilliant.
whole. I liked that they followed them to China. That whole segment.
Yeah. Wasn't it creepy for you guys to see that they have an anthem for their company in Chinese, saying that
that wasn't really
cringy.
surprising to me, but.
Well, you lived in China for a while.
Yeah,
so.
I did, and I studied abroad there, and I also worked at an English summer camp for teaching kids English, and I lived in the dorms while I was teaching, and they would play the school anthem at 6:30 in the morning every day to wake everyone up, which I didn't like, but yeah, that anthem reminded me of the school's anthem.
I wonder if that's like an Asian thing, because I remember my my boss's father, when South Korea was going through this baby boom, they were worried about overpopulation, so he got involved with the government to make songs, these cheery songs about how you should have only one kid,
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Actually. There's a documentary called One Child Nation.
Oh, I never got around to it.
Yeah, it's a Chinese document. Yeah.
It's similar?
Yeah.
Did they have song propaganda?
Yeah, exactly. They in that documentary, the director she's showing how propaganda songs have a role in shaping the public opinion of like one child and how it's good. So maybe that's why I give the whole creepy feeling, because in my memory it ties back to the whole idea of like abortion or mandatory abortions for to enforcing one child policy. But yeah, maybe it's only me because I have that background in my mind. But generally, I found it like strange to have like an anthem for a company. I have never heard of like something like that for a company, at least in Middle East. But
You don't see like Apple having a.
Well, did either of your
Company.
schools ever have like school songs that you had to sing at assemblies? No?
Just the Star Spangled Banner.
Oh, maybe because I went to Catholic school.
There we go.
yeah, I get like, for example, at school, like my Penn State has like a song that they are singing at the games, but it's for chanting during the games. It's not for
Yeah.
like. You know.
Well, I thought it was interesting how they like comparing.
Rapped. Because I thought that was the worst. That was cringy. Like I was fine with the corporate song, but then when they broke out in rap, I was like, okay, this is so awful.
Yeah.
Sorry, you were saying something.
How they were. I thought it was interesting because they showed the singing and the chanting in China, and then they showed like the chanting for the union.
Oh yes, that was a nicely shot and like edited scene, I feel like. But talking about the whole unionization and union, I know that Mike, you said that you think the movie tried to show that being part of a union is a good thing, and I know that the directors in their like acceptance speech during the Oscar ceremony, they said that they hope all workers around the world to be united. But what's your take on the whole unionization or the whole union storyline in this film?
That's very interesting. Are we done with all the positive insights?
I actually have another positive.
Oh,
what's
okay.
up?
So, especially since I studied in China and I had good experiences there. I had positive experiences. So it just reminded me of when I was first going on the trip, everyone around me was freaking out. They're like, "You're going to China? What? That's crazy." Like, people kept asking me, "Did you know they eat dogs? Did you know they're communist?" And they just couldn't believe that I was going. And I think it's important that this film shows everyone it depicts as human, because like growing up, media never depicted China as a good place, like current modern China as a good place.
Oh, sorry.
And
other than Kung Fu, right?
Yeah, other than Kung Fu.
Everyone loves Kung Fu.
And I think the film just showed what I experienced there, that no matter where you go in the world, everyone's just human.
Yeah, and I think they utilized part of how they did that too was really like keyed in on humor. I thought they were very funny when they wanted to be like. I love the broken Asian speak, because I come from a household where like Konglish was the language, which is like half Korean, half English. So you'd have to kind of piece things together. I love the car collapsing when they were trying to roll it up the ramp. I love the grammar mistakes when they translated like a Chinese thing to English.
On the wall.
Yeah, like it was missing a the or something like that. On both sides. Oh yeah, I love the reaction to Sherrod Brown's speech when he brought up the union for the first time. I thought it was cool, like how like they showed the reaction of I'm gonna cut his head off or something.
Yeah,
like
the
that.
American supervisor said, "Oh, we need to kill a senator," and the Chinese worker was
and
standing there like.
And Sherrod Brown in that speech wasn't even like for or against. What he was for was the vote.
Yeah.
He was like, you guys just vote. He didn't say, you guys should have a union or you guys shouldn't have a union. He was just like, hey, you guys should have a vote on this. And the guy was still like, just because you brought it up, you know? So I thought it was perfect that they showed the initial reaction and then also followed up with some more reactions from him later. Any more positives, guys?
Yeah, to me also, the last positive thing that comes to my mind is like, this jumps from like ups and from like sadder moments to like higher moments was like kind of a good thing for me because it was pretty balanced in terms of like showing something negative about China, then again lift it up and showing Chinese culture and taking you to the China. Like prior to that, all you could hear is that like how Chinese don't care about like regulations and safety. But the next thing you will see is that the crew will go to China, and all the U.S. Like vice president and like the crew are there, and like they are saying that they like Chinese culture. And you see the big guy is crying in the hallway saying that, oh, now I know we are all the same. And the next thing that you will see in the video, I mean the film, it's not the exact very next thing, but after that storyline you will see how Chinese how the chairman decided to get rid of American vice president in the US plan and like put the another Chinese director for the plant. So it was kind of balanced. Like you don't shape like a evil or necessarily very good view of one side. So
yeah, definitely. I think that's a recurring theme. I think we all
Yeah.
agree that it was fairly balanced and unopinionated. Not unopinionated, but they didn't put their opinions on the forefront and
Yes.
really like turned it into a one-sided thing. Before we get to personal insights and like the general view, because I think it's great that we should definitely delve into the whole broader topics of the subject of the film, which is basically like Midwest factory and unionization. Let's just cover some negative insights as well, since we covered the positive insights. We already know from you, Yasmin, that you felt, I guess, it was kind of boring in a way. Do you have any other negative things that you wanted to talk about film-wise that it did? Not necessarily about the subject matter?
I was also a little bit confused about like the timeline of stuff that is happening. I mean, it was pretty straightforward, but I wish at least from the storytelling points of view, I could get like more detail or more data written on the screen. They did it at some points, especially in the beginning, but I was a little bit confused, and I wish I could like see the years that these events are happening. I know that probably it wasn't like convenient for the filmmakers, because I guess that there were moments of pause in their filming. Like they didn't film all the time throughout like the 4-year period for sure. So probably that's why they couldn't mention exactly like which year the events are happening. But I wish we could have some insights on that as well, like the at least the year and the time some of the events are happening.
Yeah, you have no idea how much time has passed. Or
Yes, exactly. All you know in the beginning that, in 2008, the plant got shut down. In 2017 was the opening of, or maybe in 2015 was the opening of Fuya Glass America. But you don't get that much information afterwards that when the whole union thing happened, vote happened, or when like the whole laying off the workers happened. So you don't get that much until the very end, that you see that in 2018 they are actually able to make profit. So there was a jump for me, and I wish I could get more information about the timeline a little better. So that's my.
I concur.
Yeah.
Yeah. And whether it was like their direction or not, to go this not necessarily traditional way of presenting a documentary, more ethnographic, like you guys said, or more anthropologic filmmaking. With the time that, like you said, I think that was the first time I've heard that, they started filming without, any sort of like funding or backing or real direction, to be able to piece together and do it so well and have it flow the way they did make it flow. You got to give them credit, because that's a lot of work that they put into it. But because of that and because of that style, I can see how like it gets kind of confusing, like, you know,
Yes.
not necessarily confusing, but it's not straightforward, the timeline of things. And sometimes it's just so abrupt. I mean, you follow like one character and then he's driving in a car saying, when I used to work for, you know,
Yes.
there was no like,
Yeah.
how, you know, it was just a jump. He had a job and then he didn't have a job and there was no in between.
Exactly. That happened with other characters, like the character Jill that we see that she found an apartment because of the job that she has now in Fuya. And the next scene, we are seeing her like that she's get fired because she was like pro-union.
And for me, I didn't see her enough, or she wasn't presented enough as like a main character, that when I saw her on the picket line saying that she lost her job, I had to go, wait, was that the one that we saw in the apartment, or was that somebody else?
Oh,
Yeah,
you
I didn't
mean-
realize that she was the one we saw in the basement in the apartment.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so I had written down, like, to me, this film ultimately goes nowhere. The cringy race elements, like the rapping, we talked about that. The YMCA performance from the American visitors. I agree with some of the criticism that it's somewhat dispassionate. Let's see, at the end, we get nowhere, especially when they leave on the note that automation is replacing everyone. So in a way, that union vote becomes even more inconsequential in this film. The purpose to me of a doc is to propose something, a question, argue it, and make a point, to take us on an emotional journey and make us feel strongly a certain way. And at the end of this, I didn't feel a certain way. I didn't feel like there was a point to be made and argued. And I certainly wasn't emotionally invested. So those are my negative insights, and I'll probably elaborate a little bit more when we go through the technical insights. But do you have any other negative insights that we didn't cover?
I agree with you about the automation, because at the end they just had a couple minutes about automation, and I felt like it came out of nowhere, and it wasn't
Yes.
really related to like they seem to be focusing on lots of different worker stories.
Yes.
And I don't see how that was
Exactly.
related.
So that's a very like shocking factor for me to see that in like some of the professionally written critiques, people refer to automation as like the whole villain of the story, and I was like, oh, maybe this movie got so long and boring for the critics that they skipped the beginning, in between of the movie, and they jumped to the end of the movie. So all they could get from this movie was the whole debate around the automation. But in reality, you don't see that much, and you don't get that much story, or at least backstory about like the automation. So I feel like that the automation part was kind of like sudden, and you don't even get the feeling that people are getting laid over just because of automation. All the people you see previously just lost their job. It's because they were either part of the union or because they were not efficient enough. There was no discussion that they were just got fired because of like the automation. There was no discussion of that. So that was definitely a negative like point for me as well. It was very sudden. There was no story. It was not. There was no backstory. And the shocking fact again is that in like a lot of critiques online, I've read that people are mentioning automation and the fear over automation after watching this movie, but there was a lot more to focus rather than the automation. So that was my take.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think I agree too. So I didn't read too many reviews. I think I perused Rotten Tomatoes just to see kind of like what the overall like reaction was. So I didn't know that was like a main concentration, people talking about.
Because that was not a main concentration of the film.
Yeah, no, not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all.
So that's why I was like, okay, maybe they got bored. The critics, they got bored too, so they skipped the whole movie. And
You
they
heard it.
literally-
Yaz is accusing you guys of not doing your jobs, critics. So Rolling Stone, New York Times,
I
Roger
get it.
Moore,
Seriously.
watch your movies.
Seriously, the automation is like the biggest fear for a lot of traditional working class
It's true.
Americans.
Listen to Andrew Yang, Yang
Yeah.
Gang.
Yes.
Oh wait, he's out. Oh, no. Oh no.
Why would you make us sad all over again?
Come back to us, Yang.
Oh, but what you were saying about the observational style. I fully acknowledge that I enjoyed that after my studies in visual anthropology, because that's how visual anthropology film is done. But at first, when I started watching those kinds of observational films, I found them hard to watch. I was like, maybe this is why nobody knows about visual anthropology, or it's not like a big field, because nobody could watch the films.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it was highly educational.
It was very educational.
And I appreciate it for that. All I'm simply saying is not my cup of tea.
Yeah.
Like, but I can totally see how this format might serve a higher purpose than doing things the traditional way, So, any other negative things? And we're back. I want to set the record clear. First of all, I want to acknowledge the directors again, Julia Reichart and Stephen Bogner. You guys are totally on another level than me. So kudos to the job you guys did. And for anyone that's heard me shit on this and feel like it's too much, please don't misconstrue that. I think that they did an amazing job here. Once again, it's just not my cup of tea. But to qualm the worries of my producer over here, I think we can do amazing things regardless of the style of documentary. I was just putting my 2 cents in on the style and the direction they went. But of course, if someone wants like an ethnographic type anthropologic documentary version, they can, and they want that, I think we can deliver something great, especially this team over here.
Yeah, I think that style certainly has benefits.
So yeah, especially educational, for educational purposes. Okay, so with that being said, do you feel a little bit better, Yaz? She was so worried while we took this break.
Yeah, because I
She
was
was like,
"Oh,
"You're ruining it. You're ruining
to do a
it."
documentary like this."
Yeah, but in terms of scope, I understand it's your dream, but don't confuse what I'm critiquing in terms of the style with the scope and the impact. I think of the scope was huge, and I think obviously they made a huge impact. They won Best Documentary. Obama reached out and wanted to do it, and it's on Netflix right now, where millions of eyeballs get to be exposed to this story. So I would never turn down something that's this impactful and whatnot. I would just pitch a different way to present the story. That's all.
Oh yeah, I can buy that. But again, we can't have discussions.
You're my producer. You should know me by now. Shit.
No, but the thing is that I feel like that we have to be flexible. So if we decide for a project that it's the best way to show it in a similar style, we have to go for it. But we will have discussions then,
All right, you guys in the comment below if she's overreacting or if I'm tripping, okay? Because
No. We are good. We are good. I swear.
Okay, look at episode 1. Already we sound like Stephen A. and Max Kellerman on some of those sports debating shows. All right, so let's talk about the broader things. Some of your own personal insights into unionization. I've heard that the negative aspects might include less qualified individuals get the same protections as the good workers, which can lead to reduced productivity overall. The fact that you have to pay union dues, and that might not necessarily translate to having better pay than what you currently have. So what do you guys think? Do unions negatively impact efficiency? And what are your personal insights on the broader subject of unions? Anyone?
So I feel like that in general, having a voice and having a community is a positive thing, regardless of whatever your profession is. So it's a good thing in general, yeah, but it comes with some negative and down points, as you said. But one thing that I'm surprised about the documentary that we saw, especially American Factory, we get a lot of information. I mean, all we see during the film is a union called United Auto Workers, or like UAW tries to persuade the workers and employees to join their union. But one thing we didn't get any information on was like the role of the very same union in closure of the initial GM plant that was there before Fuya. So in 2008, I'm not talking it based on my own finding. I actually found like articles written down in 2017, and there were serious concerns expressed by like Ohio representatives, especially U.S. Rep Mike Turner, about like the intentions of this union, because apparently this union had a negative impact in closure of the first GM plant. And it was an interesting fact for me to know that there is such little stories about this whole union concept about in this film. But
Are you pro-union or against unions? Yes.
I would say that I am pro-union in general. But I'm saying that the fact that we see in the movie that people vote no is not only tied back to the fact that how Fuya's managerial team tried so hard to convince their employee to say no, to vote no. There is a backstory about the involvement of the union that we see in the movie, and there is a negative associations regarding them because they have like a negative impact in the previous closure of GM plant. And basically the deal they have, so the story is like this, that GM employees were like previously represented by another union, not the union that we see in the movie. And after GM got closed, because of the deal that the same union we see in the movie, the United Auto Worker, has with GM, the very local employees couldn't transfer to other GM plants because they were non-member of this like union. So I'm saying that I am pro-union, but when there are like different unions, obviously each of them try to like follow their like obviously each union tries to follow the benefits of its own members, so they can have colliding or sometimes negative impacts for other unions or for other working class members, which is not a cool thing to know. Like now we know as a fact that the same union we see in the movie has some negative impacts for those workers in the past. So the question for those workers is that why now they should trust this union again. So this is the story that we have we get no reference to it in the movie. So a lot of people might think that, oh, why the people vote no? But there are stories like that affect their decision not to vote yes again for the union. So I'm thinking having a general like a big union might be good. But when you have like different unions and they try to like each follow their own path, sometimes they are colliding and it's not cool. It doesn't come with good consequences for the people involved.
Interesting.
Sarah, union pro against?
I think mostly pro. I don't know. You don't hear. I feel like I don't know as much as I would like to about unions to have a more informed perspective. But in a capitalist economy where the focus is on the top people who make the rules, you need someone to back up the workers for their concerns, because that's just...
So the question, to that, or the retort is, shouldn't you have a corporate structure where you can relay those concerns and have it be dealt with?
Yeah, that would also work.
In an appropriate manner, in a timely manner. And then subsequently, if this theoretically, if companies don't do that and don't respond, they would have less employees, and either A, would be forced to change or shut down, I guess. You know? Because I don't know where I stand on unions either. I think that there can be a benefit, especially in this case where, you know, a foreign entity is coming into the United States. But I hate bottlenecks, and I hate the idea that, okay, from now on, you don't, if this is completely 100% true, you no longer talk to your management team at the place you work for. You voice your concerns to the union, and then they bring it up and represent you, you know? And
I don't like that cut off
Yes.
being there.
Yeah. So, like, and on the one hand, I can sort of identify with, okay, well, you know, the union guys will, so you bring up a concern like, hey, they're dumping chemicals down the drain, right? So then they voice the concerns and make it appropriate. But then don't we have government entities that should be regulating and watching this in the first place? So why do the unions need to get involved with that sort of subject? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think unions can be like any other corporation or government entity. They can also be corrupt.
Yeah, they can be corrupt, but I feel like that the main purpose of unions should be like first protect the what do we call it? First to protect the privilege or rights of its members. So it's understandable that if the union is a good thing when it comes to like fighting for like higher wages or fighting for other better benefits, work benefits, or health insurance or things like that. But when it comes to just like being a meddling force and sometimes not letting the foreign investors come easily and like invest and open new plants, it's not a cool thing. And we will get some info in the documentary in that respect also. Like we see like an employee express that after few years of being unemployed, now someone is found and Fuya came and they gave me this opportunity. I don't want to vote yes because it's like a slap on their face. So to some extent, oh guys, please cut this part out. I blew it off.
No cutting. We had one cut during the break. I'm not going to search for this. No, I get what you're saying though. I tell you what, let me tell them like my personal experience with a union. How about that? And then we can segue into something else. I just remember like not having a good experience because I went to film a live event one time, and I've never had trouble getting a live feed from the mixer board. Whoever is controlling the mixer at a time when you have a live event, there's a guy in the back, and you know he has all the audio feeds coming in, and usually you can just plug in, get that feed. Mm-hmm. So I think it was for dermatology summit, and we went there. Everything was set up, and then when I asked to get the feed, they said no, they're part of a union for the hotel. And after much talk, it cost us $3,000 to be able to plug into this, and I couldn't just work something out. Like they were about to start, and for over an hour I was dealing with them, having to talk to a union rep to get the yay or nay and how much is this going to cost, you know. And I don't know where they came up with that number, if they just pulled it out of their ass or whatever, but it took time and then it took money to be able to just plug in, because that guy couldn't just make a decision and do it. And that's why I brought up that whole bottleneck part. Is I don't like having to deal with all these, you know, extra. I think that was part of the appeal to me with like UBI is, you know, I'd rather have that than all these different governmental programs that you have to go to, apply, run through this whole gamut procedure and stuff. Just put it, if possible, just put it in the hands of the people and not have all these extraneous steps along the way. Yeah. So to me, I can understand the purpose and see the benefits, but at the same time, I'm struggling with that, just another entity right between me and the boss, you know, or me and management, you know. So, and I'm sure if I had a different work experience, you know, if I worked at a factory, I might think, you know, completely different.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. So, we briefly talked about automation blasting away manufacturing labor force. Do you think this is the last generation where, or do you foresee a need for human American manufacturing labor?
You go.
I mean, even when you have machines, you have to have people who are supervising them, right? Or
Yes.
fix them in case things go wrong.
And also, with the current speed of like automation, they are replacing only some parts of like the process. Like in architect, based on my background, I have some exposure previously with like working with robotic arms.
Oh, cool.
So they are still very limited in terms of what they can do, like in terms of the movements and like the things that they can. So basically, if you imagine it, it has like a limited types of like movement, and it cannot predict what it can. You can make your robotic arm be able to forecast what he or she should do as a next step, but there's a limit to that. So I feel like that, yeah, with the at least the current speed that we see, thinking that
Okay, so how long then? We've got currently 2,000 employees. I think FUYA still employs about 2,000 American workers. How many years will it take before they can whittle that 2,000 down to like 5 overseers of all these machines? Because of
it's
automation.
not going to happen, even because if it's
It's
fully
not going to happen
gonna
at all.
because
Ooh.
if it's fully
Disagree.
automated, we at least need like different people's like in charge of safety or in charge of like maybe Elon Musk could come here and like
whose safety if there's only 5 people there and just a bunch of machines?
no like maybe safety is not but the quality control, or there are different, again, like
I'm sure robotics can quality control. They can probably see better than
okay, the
like,
robots can have, but there should be a person to run or hit that button, right?
But how many button pushers do you need in that case? Because I personally believe that, within the next decade, they could probably reduce their workforce.
So next decade we will see you and make another podcast and we will discuss. But it's definitely a trend, but I don't see it coming in the next like 20 years.
Oh, I think 10 to 20 years we're going to see like trucks on the road fully.
Trucks on the roads is like another thing, but automated a full line.
I mean, haven't you seen like videos of like Amazon warehouses now, like where there's barely any employees? It's all just
because the employees are not working on the warehouse again. But as Sarah said, the type of the work that the employees are doing will be shifting. So you don't need necessarily the employees doing the hand stuff, but you will have.
I know,
like
but how many do you need from 2,000 is like my point is that number is going to be drastically reduced. I might have just, been exaggerating with like you only need 5 people in the factory.
Maybe it come down to 500, but
But that's
a huge difference then. And I agree. I think 500 is more reasonable.
yes,
But still a big drop down from like
Yeah.
2,000 or 3,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, if you take into consideration the age, so in the documentary, as we see, a lot of like these workers are middle age.
Yeah.
You don't see as much as like younger employee working. Even the Chinese people that we see, we think that they are young, but we see the guy, he has like a family, so he must be in his 40s.
Oh
at
yeah,
least.
Asians can confuse you with their age.
Yes.
Like most people don't know, but I am 72.
Looking pretty good.
Just Asians.
Looking pretty good.
Yeah. Please introduce me your like skincare routine.
No skincare routine. I'm just Asian.
But I think, yeah, so these generations, like it or not, I mean, the generations right now working as like traditional workers in the factories, like it or not, they are middle-aged, so they will get retired, and hopefully the next generations to be replaced, they will do other types of things. Like they will be in charge of data warehouses, they will be in charge of like coding or other aspects of the industry.
But I don't think that was like the original proposed question. The question was like, how long before the American labor force? Obviously, with new technology, new positions and career paths open up.
Yes.
So obviously whatever we lose in terms of the manufacturing labor force will gain in terms of like, maybe, engineers or of these robotics, right?
Oh,
I'm so sorry. I was trying to put it down gently, and it slipped.
Yeah, so
I don't have a definite answer. Maybe the person to answer your question is Naveed.
I don't think any of us really know because nobody can accurately predict the future. I think Aaron Swartz agreed with Andrew Yang. He's like kind of like a futurist. I don't remember his name, but he disagreed with the timeline. He thought it was 20 to 30 years versus 10 to 20 years. So it's up for debate. No one can really tell. I just strongly feel that this is the way it's going to go.
Yeah, but I again insist on my like viewpoint that you have to also see the population. You have to look at the infographic of the population, the worker populations that you are talking about. They are mostly middle-aged. They are boomers or like maybe older.
But
generation.
that wasn't the question. The question was the actual like putting the glass and doing all this stuff.
Okay, I know, I get
so
that.
So obviously, with new
But
technology, new positions will open up.
Yeah, I'm saying that. But if you, so you want to reach to, so you raise that question to get an answer that would be terrifying. Wasn't the main purpose of your question to raise a concern? So my the way that I answered your question was to say that concern shouldn't be there, because it's a frightening thing if we think nowadays like all the population, half of the populations of working class, they should be laid
off. If the timeline is 10 to 20 years, if some of these manufacturer workers, like some of the ladies can be like 40, 50 years old, and with the amount of income and their income level, they're going to need to work for the next 20, 30 years. You know what I mean? It's not like these people are trust fund babies and they have, like hundreds of thousands of dollars like in their bank. With the timeline, I think it's still going to be a concern.
Yeah, if you think about that, but if you take the average like age right now in factories or workforce that we have as like 45 or 50 in 20 years or 25 years, it's something about like they should be around like 70. So
or 10 years from now.
Yeah. If it's 10 years, there should be other support programs to think about those people who get laid off because of automation, definitely. So that's why we need Bernie Sanders to come and provide.
That's why we need UBI.
Health insurance for all.
Yeah, just looking at the numbers, even that there was an African American lady sitting on the steps who mentioned that she was getting, I think she worked at the GM plant beforehand and she was getting paid $29 an hour, and then she worked for Fuya and she was only getting $12.84. Yeah. For manufacturing jobs. So, it's horrible that at that age that's what she's got to do. That was kind of a shock to me.
Yeah, that was horrifying, thinking about like dropping your salary from 29 hourly rate to like less than half.
Yeah, for sure, less than half.
It's like,
do you guys want to talk at all about how the Chinese culture looks at productivity and equates that to happiness? And if you guys can relate at all, I don't know, with your backgrounds, because I know definitely the way I was raised was, you got to do this stuff because you got to be at this position. It was never hey, so what are you interested, like, what are you interested in? What subjects catch your eye? What do you want to do in the future? It was, no, you go to school, you get A's, you get disciplined if it's anything less than an A, even if it's like a B plus or an A minus, and you're going to be either a lawyer or a doctor. And it's push, and then and that'll mean I'm happy, and that'll mean you're happy, because you don't have to worry about money anymore. We lost the light, people. Everyone's like worried. Yeah, I was running that on full juice. So go ahead. Why don't you guys talk while I run and get another battery? You guys, I leave you this subject.
Chinese.
Well, I mean, as an American, my family always emphasized working hard. I was never told I had to take a specific direction. I mean, I studied anthropology, so, but like the message to me growing up was just like work hard, doing whatever it is that you want to do. So I didn't have the aspect of you need to do this, but I did have that aspect of you do need to be determined and work your ass off for whatever it is, and then you'll be happy.
Yeah, I feel like that for me as a person who raised in a traditional Persian family, the push was always to follow education and to follow a path that comes with some sort of certainty for the future. Like that's why most people in Iran, they like to go for like jobs like being a lawyer or the doctor or like be an engineer, and less people are like encouraged to go after arts or art fields and humanity fields, because there are like, there's less prospect of becoming successful on those films, on those fields, in terms of maintaining your financial status or like basically becoming rich is less of a prospect on those fields. So yeah, but again, the same here. My family never told me that, oh, you have to follow this path and you have to become this or that. And yeah.
Then even though in my family, we were always told to like work hard in our education and stuff. I think it's very American to be like, you work hard in education, and then but like also make sure you have time to like live.
Yes.
Especially to like be a family. Like my family would take vacations every year.
They assign value to that.
They always assign value to having a life outside of work.
Can you guys imagine only having 1 to 2 days off, like some of those Chinese workers in the documentary, per month? That was shocking to me. Like 1 to 2 days off per month.
Yeah, that was like striking.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe that.
It's just that's the only thing you do then.
And when they had a team meeting and the Chinese manager said, basically, everything's casual over here. You can even talk poorly of the president. I was like, what? Like, I couldn't imagine living, in a place where, one, I only had 1 to 2 days off per month, and then two, I got to worry about saying shit about like the president. Like that. That's crazy, right? Even with the coronavirus and the doctor who first tried to report it, and then he got detained.
And even with my friend who lives in Wuhan, where was the ground zero for coronavirus, and she was first texting me about it. We were texting each other on WeChat, which is a Chinese-based social media texting and sort of a Facebook sort of thing.
Yeah.
And she would start telling me about some of the stuff that was happening that wasn't being reported in the media. She was like, "Oh, let's switch to WhatsApp," because she was concerned about being caught.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's try and watch the tables.
Oh,
Sorry.
yes. The tapping. I agree with that, and that's why I still have some fears whenever there is a discussion about like China is now like becoming superpower in terms of like the global financial world, that China is becoming a superpower. I feel like that there are a lot of things that still worries me, like the way that they treat their own people. Basically, there is not democracy. That's for sure a thing. But also one thing that we have to keep in mind is that they are dealing with a very different population than, for example, we deal here, and their whole infrastructure and political infrastructure, if we can call something like that,
and different history.
It's very different. And all the time I am hearing that whenever people trying to argue, or compare like Canada and US, and for example talking about like how Canada in some perspectives is better in terms of like the way they deal with their like healthcare, the argument that I'm hearing from US people is that because Canada has like 1/10 of population of US, so it has to deal with like a lot less issues. So again, comparing US to China has a lot more population, so they have to deal with a lot of like more complexities. And who knows if like any countries have that big of a population, how they would treat their like people when it comes to like epidemic like coronaviruses. Who knows if US could be any better. So these are the questions that we can never know, because just the environment and the culture is very different.
Yeah, definitely different. I think that's a lot of where conflicts can kind of arise, is people don't take into account a person's history, a person's roots and whatnot, and just sort of make assumptions and only see the differences. So
yes,
I like, and that's another reason why I liked the interaction between the American and the Chinese workers, because they found things to enjoy together that they found similarly entertaining or funny or interesting. Let's see, other things that we might want to talk about. How about pride in face? I thought it was interesting when the chairman talked about, it wasn't about the money. It was about working hard working hard because you represent China. And that's...
Actually, I have the same exact quote. The most important thing is not how much money we earn, but how will change Americans' views of the China and towards Chinese people.
Yeah.
So
I'll take it a step further, though. Like in my personal experience, I don't know if it's a Korean thing, but you also needed the money. Show pride, show face, represent the name. You're Korean, but also make a ton of money.
Yeah. Actually, when I was researching stuff about this film, I found on social media, like Reddit and stuff, a lot of people posting about this film from the 1980s called Gung Ho, which is a fictional film, but it was like essentially like a fictionalized version of this film, where like this Japanese businessmen came up and opened up a company in America, and they had the same problems. Like, Americans are lazy, entitled, they're doing things for the money, not for the face of the company. So I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, no, and it's different because we like your parents sort of assign value to doing things outside of work, and it appears not the case with China. I know that's not necessarily the case with the older generation of Koreans. What about with your Iranian family? Like, how much stock do they put into?
I talked about this stuff while you were up there, like how they try always to persuade kids or younger generation to pursue things that they bring wealth, for sure, because they always see the financial stability as like the pillar of like happiness.
Was there any like you represent though the country also, and not just do what pleases you? Like watch what you, because you represent the country as well.
No, I'm not representing the country. I have to like say that we have to believe that every person just represent themselves.
So that's how you grew up, and that's how your culture is normally?
No, but I cannot say, because with modern era, rise of social media and a lot of debates on how people should react in public, or how should we be watchful of our mouth when we are talking. I feel like that now there is a global awareness around it. You are no longer representative of your people or culture.
Except China.
Yeah. So
I think it varies among the population, though.
Of course,
Like-
there's going to be variance, but
Yeah.
as a whole, in general, I mean, he said it. You represent China,
But if you-
and you don't have that individuality because the doctor didn't. He was detained, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like they're free to just express themselves as individuals. They want to contain and control the narrative around their country, and thus, you are representing more than just yourself, your country. So no, don't get me wrong.
No,
I
no,
do
no,
get
I
what
don't
you're
get
saying.
you
I just
wrong. I
just don't think it applies in general to
no, it
China.
just don't applies. But I feel like it was a way, or it was a way for the
Or
chairman.
Russia, maybe, right?
It was a way for chairman to like motivate its Chinese workers or Chinese cohort to work harder, and
Yeah,
like
that's
no
true,
one
too.
complain. And
Yeah.
we have to always keep in mind that these people, they know that they are being filmed, so they don't want to like be improper or say things that are rude and say that, oh, go fuck these Americans, and like make them like you're a slave or things like that.
Language. I'm just kidding.
No, I'm just. But this is a fact, really. While I was watching this movie, I was thinking that how much these people are speaking of their truth, to what percentage they are aware that they are being filmed and they might be shown later to a public audience, how that will impact the things that they will say on camera. So that's a factor that we have to also take into consideration whenever we watch a movie. Even if it's like a documentary movies, it doesn't mean that these people are 100% genuine or they are speaking of their truth. But
I think that goes without saying for anything.
yeah,
But regardless, though, I think that they are sort of, at least from my personal experience, it's very familiar how they were reacting and the messaging from the chairman, and they're feeling obligated to a certain extent. Okay. Any other personal insights before we get into the technical part of things and wrap this up? We're already an hour and a half in. So
I just wanted to point out something interesting I found
Yeah.
with translation. There was one scene later on in the movie after they replaced the American president or vice president with a Chinese one, and he was talking, had a staff meeting with the Chinese workers, and he was talking about like an idiom with like, you pet donkeys in the direction that their fur grows, and in the subtitles it said Americans are like donkeys who prefer to be touched in the direction of their hair grows. But he didn't say Americans, he said
just donkeys.
he said for everyone likes to are like
for
donkeys.
everyone.
Yeah, because it's an
okay.
idiom.
Yeah.
So, because
okay.
I felt like he said that and I was like, whoa, that feels really like aggressive.
Yeah, okay.
And yeah, but he didn't.
very good
yeah.
point. Yeah.
Yeah.
I felt that when I was watching the movie, but because in Persian, actually, we have a very similar idioms about all the time donkeys and monkeys and like a lot of animals. So I thought that, okay, it's an idiom. It doesn't meant to be like offensive. But yeah, a lot of people that they are not familiar with the culture and how the idioms or like fables working in like they work in like Asian culture or let's say Eastern culture in general, it might be offensive, but it's part of like it's an Eastern thing that whenever we want to like talk about the situation, we try to like use symbols or like idioms or expressions. So for
But
me,
yeah,
it wasn't
so
offensive.
that was well, I can see how that would be offensive if they attached in the subtitle. I have to rewatch it. Americans, versus just people.
Yeah. It
you know?
said Americans are like donkeys.
Yeah.
But-
So yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's what she was trying to bring up is the fact that the subtitles, it wasn't translated properly, or it maybe might have been misled in a certain way, because, and like I said, I have to rewatch it, but it made it seem like Americans. Like that Chinese people said Americans are like donkeys when it wasn't that, because
Yes.
I think if it was
Yeah.
just people, then no one would worry about that, and people
Yes.
understand what idioms
I think
are.
the harshest
Yes.
thing they said about Americans is that they have fat fingers. That's it. Let's deal with that.
I love that vest.
You can't get the rest around.
And if you pay attention, the only person who was kind of like trash talking about like Americans being lazy was another American person, but he was like speaking Chinese. It was,
Oh yeah, the one who said that he wants to put duct tape on his workers' mouths.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there were still some Chinese people that said something, but then there were Americans who said some negative stuff about the Chinese. So it was balanced
Yes.
that way.
I feel like that again, if you want to like really compare, it was mostly Americans who are talking very open about Chinese or how bad they are. I mean, still I feel like that Chinese in this movie, they have been really conservative with the things that they were talking about. It might not be shown in the movie the same way, but if you really pay attention to the things that they are saying,
I can only judge it based on what was presented. So I don't want to like make any assumptions that they like withheld their real feelings. That's on the filmmakers and that's on the subjects. So I don't want to change any thought other than our thoughts
Yes.
are based off of what was presented. So let's talk technical really quick before we wrap it up. I thought it was wonderful choreography with the music, and the workers sort of moved in a ballet fashion in the start of the film. The cinematography, I can't rave enough about it. It was excellent in so many ways. The use of composition and lighting, like almost every frame, especially when the camera was on sticks, looked like a legit awesome photo. There's this phrase, like every frame a painting, like, every frame in a video, 24 frames a second, should stand on its own as a great photo.
And I like their focus on like they showed like close-ups of the processes going on in the factory too,
Oh yeah.
which I thought was interesting.
I was thinking about you all the time when I was seeing they showing the actual process of the things. I was like, oh, that's so anthropological. That's so ethnographic. Sarah must love it.
The process, not really. That's just
Yeah, but there are a lot of like,
And no, it is ethnographic.
yeah, the style and like, there were, come on, you can take those out of the video and the story still doesn't
no.
hurt.
Those are just beautiful shots.
No, we are saying that. So anthropologic shots could be still very beautiful.
No, the style is you're getting in a factory and you're establishing the factory, so you have these close-up shots. It's not necessarily. I mean, it can be anthropological, but it's also just like good shots that you see in
It is
fiction and
good shots.
nonfiction
It's
works.
good shots, and it's also I feel
It's
like
not. It's
anthropology.
what I'm saying is it's not special to like
Well, no.
ethnographic filmmaking.
No. Don't get me wrong, but I'm saying that it has a lot of. It's showing a lot of like process or like manufacturing things that could be just cut out of it. I mean.
No, I mean you look at what was it was any one of the last 10 years newspaper movies. They have beautiful shots of the newspaper press. But that's not an ethnographic film. You know what I mean? So all I was saying is that it's not.
No, I
it's
agree with
not
you.
a special or unique thing to that style of filmmaking. The comment was
Of
it was
course,
just
of
like
course, of
great
course.
shots, because I don't want anyone to misconstrue and go, oh wait, that's ethnographic filmmaking. It's not. Ethnographic filmmaking is like an observational portrayal of something, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, that's ethnographic. And those
Well,
shots aren't ethnographic filmmaking. You're the
basic-
expert. Why
You're
don't
the
you define
expert,
it?
yes,
Define
yes.
it.
Yeah. Basically, yes. There are different ways to do ethnographic film, but it's
In general,
the traditional way is an observational way of filmmaking that's also reflexive. So you work with the participants and you include them in the filmmaking process.
right, and that is a very general sense. And we were just
Yes.
talking very
Yes,
specific
we're
about the shot.
process. The shots of like the manufacturing. So what's your
But that's not. Those shots aren't ethnographic filmmaking, is what I'm trying to say. The whole documentary was more.
It's ethnographic
filmmaking than
that it
anything.
includes everything.
yes.
not
But
talking about
what
the
I'm
shots. I think
saying-
we're
Yeah.
just not understanding each other, and we're like working on like
I-
the,
No,
the nuanced
No,
definitions.
I understand what you are saying, but I'm saying that the amount of the shots that we are seeing about manufacturing is more than enough for a regular film. Because it's an ethnographic film, they put a special emphasis to include those scenes. Like we see a lot of scenes that people are working with
As
their
a
hands.
whole, what I'm saying is, as a whole, it is very ethnographic filmmaking. But those shots of like things in process have not. Those are shots. Those are type of shots.
You can
I own the technical insights. You guys comment who's right. All right, you guys look up the definition.
we have, like,
We're talking about the technical insights. Okay, as a whole, yes,
Yes.
it is. I was talking about the actual shots, and then you said that those shots were ethnographic filmmaking. No, those are just shots. As a whole,
I think that
yes,
you
it's ethnographic
are like
filmmaking.
arguing with me for over something that is not necessary. That is not necessary.
That's how it felt. Should we cut this off and have a real discussion or something?
No, please include that because I liked it. I like this discussion.
Okay.
But I feel again the number of those shots that we are saying, the quantity of those shots, leaning more towards an ethnographic film because they put a special emphasis on those shots. But there are still shots. I agree with that. Everything is still a shot. And it's not, you can can tell that.
All I'm trying to say is that ethnographic filmmaking is a very general umbrella. Yes, these shots add to it, but also the fact that they didn't have sit-down interviews and concentrated on the arc of certain characters and introduced, like 10 to 15 and tracked. Those are the things that really contribute to the fact that it's an ethnographic film. Not those particular shots of stationary objects or manufacturing procedures in motion.
What's your input?
I agree with that last statement.
Yes. Okay. The last statement, yeah.
That's all I was trying to say. So this back and forth was for naught. So part of the dispassion comments, I think, comes from the fact that there isn't a main character or two or three to follow. I do feel that there are too many characters with too little time spent with them to make an emotional investment or connection. We said that already. Part of the reason why you think of not like some fiction work, right, is like before the Avengers came out, it was like a concern. Shit, we only have 2 hours, and there's going to be 5 characters. How is this director going to pull it off? How's Joss Whedon going to pull it off? Mm-hmm. And that was even with all of them having their own movie. You know what I mean? So in a 2-hour span, it's very difficult to keep track of like 20 characters is what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. In a way, the two main characters are the Chinese workers, managers on the one side, and the American characters and the managers on the other side. And all I want to point out is that in essence is more difficult to create empathy when it's a group rather than a character that personifies that group.
I agree with that.
Like for instance, when a Chinese worker has a moment after smoking a cigarette telling us it's his favorite part of the day, and he speaks of missing his family, it's a poignant moment that would have been more impactful if we had known a little bit more about him and his journey earlier in the film. As it stands, it is what it is. They did a good job of sporadically interjecting humor. I thought that was like a big point, to just change up the tone. I think you mentioned too that you liked the fact that it was
up and down,
right? So it wasn't just completely dark or not dark, but gray, right? Depressing in a way. Mm-hmm. Let's see. I would have liked to see personally just a little bit more of the home life as part of the buildup to the union vote. I think they did a great job showing without telling, like the group wedding. They didn't say that China was like in a way de-individualizing people, but just like the image of like, oh, it's this like group wedding. It's You know what I mean? To me, they did a good job of, without narration or without that main character of showing certain elements without having any,
Yeah.
anything on
Mhm.
to help supplement that.
I'm
And
so dumb. I thought that they made that not as a real thing. I thought it's part of the ceremony. I didn't think that it's actual
I
wedding.
took it as a real thing.
I
It
thought
must be.
I think it was
must be.
real. I think it was also New Year's celebration.
It was
Lunar
New
New
Year's
Year's.
celebration, but what he's saying, yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't understand that. I thought that it's part of like the whole ceremony. I didn't think that. I. Oh my god, I'm so stupid. Yeah, you are right.
I don't know for sure.
No. It's definitely what you are saying, because I know, for example, in some parts of Iran, they have this kind of things that a lot of people get married on the same stage at the same time, and usually it was part of government's propaganda to encourage the youth to get married while they are younger. So yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. I did, while I was watching it, I didn't observe it as like a real thing. I thought it's part of like the whole celebration, like the children shows. I didn't realize that it's actual wedding.
Oh.
But yeah,
That's just the way I took it. I just, I thought maybe,
You
I
are
didn't know
absolutely-
whether they were like employees and stuff, but I just thought it contributed to this idea that, it's the identity is the country. It's less about the individual,
Yes.
So,
yeah.
and I
Good
thought
catch.
that the only real character of significance from beginning to end was the chairman. And we don't really hear him articulate his point of view until the end.
Yeah.
That's the way I felt. Because I think while he was sitting in the back of a limo or a car or something
Yes.
like that, he had some personal insights that I thought would have been nice to hear more of. Like, does he genuinely feel?
Yeah, it felt kind of like tacked on at the end. I thought, like, is this a way of trying to make us sympathize with him more? And I don't know. I think it would have been better if they had some more of, if they could expand on that more.
Yeah, again, his character is part of the reason that I feel negative about my whole experience, because I didn't know what to do with him. But it's, again, I get it. It's part of the main reason that he didn't show necessarily as like a white or black character. He was more gray, but I was so confused how I should feel about him throughout the whole story, and part of that confusion, again, coming from the fact that there wasn't like an overarching or uniting theme. That's the thing that I feel is missing. But again, I get it. It is part of what they try to achieve, actually. So yeah, but for me, his character was like, I don't know what or how I should feel about him.
About the chairman.
Yeah, like, even when he tries to be like, even when the camera tries to get really close to him and you want to like read through his thoughts, it's still like you will see a face and he tries to hold the things. I mean, he's like acting. I don't know.
You don't know how you feel about him, like.
Yes.
Yeah, couldn't get a good read on him, huh?
Yes, it's so hard. It's so hard. It might be like part of the reason that I am not familiar with Chinese culture in a very deeply manner, so I can't read him that well or his intentions. But as you said, about the scene that he was in the factory and he was saying that, oh, let's do the things that in a way that Americans like. You cannot tell whether he tries to fit in or whether he really feels that way, whether it's coming from a genuine place. So it's hard. But at the end of the day, you should remember, he's a businessman, he's a billionaire, he tries to make profit. So whatever story he might have, definitely he has some sort of connections with Chinese government. Otherwise, he couldn't be this powerful. So
yeah, definitely at the like Fuya headquarters in China, right? Then they have like 4 huge portraits of like Z, Mao, and none of the other two.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah.
forgot about that.
So,
Yeah.
and then like one of them said that, yeah, without them, we wouldn't, be here, sort of thing. Like the government assisted them tremendously to get
Yes,
to the
definitely.
point where they are now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. I have to talk with my Chinese friend to see what is their point of view of like this movie and how they feel. Or
Big J?
no,
No? I don't know. That's the first time I called him Big J.
It took me a second. I was like, who is that?
At the last second, I was like, should we say his name on? I don't know. Anyways, not that it matters. What about you guys? Any final thoughts on the movie? Do you want to? Should we do like a final score thing around? Like,
I'm not competent to rate this movie at all, but
Sure
don't
you
get
are.
me wrong. When I said I was bored, it doesn't mean that I didn't enjoy. I still enjoyed the fact that I learned a lot. So again, this is a very important factor for me whenever I watch a movie. And again, in our pilot video, in our pilot podcast, I think we mentioned what we are looking for in the movies and films that we are watching. So this film satisfies me in terms of like giving me new insights, giving me the informations that I would never come across otherwise, and teach me how to be patient with the storylines and characters when there are a lot of like little side stories and a lot of characters. So it was a nice challenge, but again, I felt a little bored while I was watching it, but I would give it a good grade, maybe B+.
B plus? That's
Yes.
a great grade.
Yeah.
Yeah. My mom would hate you for B plus though.
Yeah.
B plus? Oh, you study harder. All right, Sarah, what are your final thoughts on American Factory, and like what kind of score would you give it?
So I really enjoyed the film overall. I think they did a very good job with the observational side, and they covered many perspectives, as we talked about before. So, and I enjoyed the humor that they sprinkled in, and all like the cringe moments, and how I enjoyed how like it started off as this bright thing, like the future was bright, everything's gonna be great, and then it very quickly descends into like flames. But yeah, that's just the kind of thing that I like. So I'd give it. So we're doing this by like letter grades.
Well, no format yet, so
Yeah,
letter
what-
or 1 to 10.
Okay.
Or like 1 to 5.
Out of 10, I think I'd give it an 8.5.
Ooh.
So it's still like similar to B+, right?
Yeah. That's a B. You actually gave it a higher grade technically,
Really?
right?
Oh.
85% is a B.
You're right. No, I think I'll give it a 9. Because I do wish I could connect to the characters more. And the automation at the end was very odd.
Yeah, it was out of nowhere, literally.
10 on
Yeah.
that note felt a little misplaced in a way. Or not misplaced, but
It just
it
didn't.
just didn't sit
it,
right.
it
right?
didn't connect to anything else.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it connects in this sense that it's a factory, and this is a very big concern for factory workers. But they didn't set it up.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, like I said before, maybe it's the tone, and it's also easier to pick apart things, but I want to like remember that I think it was amazingly well done. I thought it was impactful because it actually got me thinking, and it's not just I had to think in preparation for this podcast, which was felt like homework, guys. Felt like homework. Look at this. Look, I don't know. I think I put more work into this than the last paper I had to
And
write.
do you think you'll get an A on it?
An A? No, I don't think so. Not at all. So I tell you what, as far as like the visuals, a 10 out of 10. Its impact and subject matter, 10 out of 10. I think overall, just because my preference lies in somewhere else in terms of like what I gravitate towards story structure wise, I would give it like a 7.5. But I know what it is, you know what I mean? And I think I'm not exposed, I'm not an expert, so I haven't seen a lot of ethnographic filmmaking. But I would think that this has got to be like one of the best ones out there, right? In that style.
Yeah, there's some really good. There are a lot of really amazing ethnographic films, but I think this one is definitely better than some I had seen.
Yeah, and like I second that on the humor. I love the humor as well. I thought it was needed. So I do recommend it checking it out because I do think that the story is actually a concern and worth watching and paying attention to.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the fact that things were relatively balanced and it wasn't pushy. I just like documentaries like Searching for Sugar Man or Imposter or The Cove, things like that. But aside from that, my final score would probably, with everything weighted, I give it a 7.5 or 8 out of 10. I think with all that being said, 8 out of 10 because it was shot really well too. So, and the music was great. Yeah. So I'll push it up to an 8. Even though the story for me is 7.5, all other things considered, we'll get it an 8. I think it seems appropriate because of the way we talked about it.
And I feel like that we are generous. So like if real critics watch it and say, oh, they should talk about the movie and they gave it at the end of the day B+ and 8 out of 10.
Well, because it's just easier to like, at least for me, like see the negatives and stuff. You know what I mean? And I got to remind myself of the positives. So, and critics, 96%.
They got high scores.
Yeah, they got 96%. Yeah, that's right, 96% on Rotten Tomato. So, and I give Yaz and Sarah a 10 out of 10 for putting up with my shit again. I'm sorry. I really want to say I'm sorry if things got out of hand. Like, I just really like when I get into a debate mode sometimes, like my head goes freaky bad. So if I took things out of context and drove things too far, like I'm really sorry. So the comments earlier, you can shit on me all you want. I deserve it. All right.
Yeah, but please leave a comment so we will know how we did and who is right. Who was right?
It doesn't matter. It's all for talk. Hopefully, you guys got something out of this podcast, though. Maybe enough to go check out American Factory if you haven't done so already. Check out our first episode where we get our bearings and talk a little bit about movies. It's a good segue into this podcast. And if you stuck it through, thank you for sticking through this 2-hour deal.
Podcast that's just as long as the movie.
Oh my god.
We should have, you know what? Instead of doing this review, we should have just did a running commentary like Mystery Science Theater 3000, Okay, guys, check out the links. We'll put the links to the last podcast in the description below, as well as the social links. I'm Michael. This is...
Yes.
This is...
I'm Sarah.
We'll have a name soon. Join us next time. All right, take care.